a werewolf shifter romance audiobook written by Annabelle. I had exactly 90 seconds to disappear into the crowd before he saw me. Before Alpha Kade Blackthorn, the man who'd scattered my ashes 4 years ago, realized the ghost standing 20 feet away was real. My daughter's hand slipped from mine. 1 second she was beside me. The next she was gone. Panic turned my blood to ice as I shoved through the ceremony crowd, searching for her copper-colored hair, her impossibly bright eyes, the eyes that marked her as his. Then I heard it. 350 wolves inhaling at once. I broke through the final row of bodies, and my heart stopped. Ivy stood at the base of the Alpha's platform, her small fingers wrapped around his wrist, looking up at him with those golden eyes that could only mean one thing. He stared down at her. Then his gaze lifted, found mine across the pavilion, and I watched 4 years of grief turn to fury in a single heartbeat. Seize her. Chapter 1. The border ceremony was halfway through when a small girl with copper-flecked golden eyes stumbled through the gathered wolves and crashed directly into Alpha Kade Blackthorn's legs. The child looked up, and every wolf in the clearing saw it. Those eyes, that exact metallic gold shade that only appeared in one bloodline. The Blackthorn family had carried it for 14 generations. Sera Quinn had exactly 90 seconds to deliver the floral arrangements to the treaty pavilion before Alpha Kade's territorial address began, and her daughter Ivy was already making everything harder. "Mama, I dropped my bracelet," the 4-year-old whined, tugging at Sera's work vest while she balanced 2 massive arrangements of night-blooming jasmine. "We discussed this, sweetheart." Sera knelt quickly, her knees protesting after a double shift at the flower shop. "You stay right beside me. You don't approach anyone. And we leave the second I'm finished. Remember?" Ivy's bottom lip quivered, but she nodded. Those golden eyes, impossibly bright, heartbreakingly distinctive, gazed up at her with awareness number 4-year-old should possess. Sera had spent 4 years teaching her daughter to be invisible. 4 years hiding at the edges of Obsidian Moon territory, taking only jobs that kept her away from pack gatherings, away from questions, away from him. The flower shop barely covered rent on their basement apartment, but it was anonymous work, forgettable work. Until today. The border ceremony was mandatory for all pack vendors. Even Sera's tiny shop, which meant she had to appear, arrange flowers, and pray that in a gathering of 350 wolves, she'd remain just another face in the crowd. She squeezed Ivy's small hand tighter as they approached the ceremonial platform. The crowd was already thick with wolves, their anticipation crackling through the spring evening. Sera kept her head down, weaving through bodies toward the decoration station. She could feel the dominance radiating from the raised dais, where the Alpha would speak. That terrible magnetic pull she'd spent 4 years escaping. "Stay right here," she whispered to Ivy, positioning her behind the flower table. "Don't move. Not 1 step." She began arranging jasmine sprays with trembling hands. "Just survive this. 4 hours maximum. Set up flowers. Stay forgettable. Go home." The crowd's murmur suddenly died. Sera's heartbeat roared in her ears. He was here. Alpha Kade Blackthorn took the platform, and even without looking directly at him, Sera felt his presence like fire in the air. The youngest Alpha in the Northern Territories. Brilliant, dangerous, legendary. And once, for one perfect spring 4 years ago, hers. "Wolves of Obsidian Moon." His voice rolled across the pavilion, rich and commanding enough to make her bones ache. "We gather to honor our borders and strengthen our bonds." Sera focused on adjusting flower stems, on keeping her breathing steady. She'd become an expert at this. The art of disappearing while standing in plain view. She'd survived 4 years by being nobody. A sharp tug on her vest made her glance down. Ivy was gone. Her heart stopped mid-beat. She spun, searching frantically behind the table, but the space was empty. "Ivy," she hissed under her breath, trying not to draw attention. "Ivy." Her daughter was tiny for her age, easily lost in a crowd this size. Terror clawed up her throat as she abandoned her station, pushing through legs and bodies. Where was she? How had she vanished in seconds? Then she heard it, a collective gasp from 350 wolves. Sera shoved forward with desperate strength, and her blood turned to ice. There, at the base of the platform, Ivy stood clutching a wilted flower, her small fingers wrapped around the Alpha's hand. "No, no, no, no." Kade Blackthorn had stopped speaking mid-sentence, staring down at the small child who'd somehow bypassed his elite guards. The entire pavilion had gone silent, hundreds of eyes fixed on the impossible scene. Sera couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only watch in horror as Ivy beamed up at the Alpha with innocent delight. "Hello, sir," her daughter chirped, her voice carrying in the stunned quiet. "I wanted to give you this flower because you look sad, and my mama says flowers make everyone feel better." The crowd erupted in whispers. Sera felt the ground tilt beneath her feet. Those eyes. Every wolf in the Northern Territories knew that Alpha Kade Blackthorn bore eyes that shifted to metallic gold during intense emotion. A marker of the ancient Blackthorn bloodline, unchanged for 14 generations. And only his true mate would carry the same copperfleck mutation. A mate he'd publicly declared dead 4 years ago. She had to run, had to grab Ivy and disappear before. "Where is your mother?" Kade's voice cut through the chaos, and Sera had never heard anything so dangerous in her life. She was already moving, pushing through the crowd, but Ivy's excited voice rang out clear as bells. "She's right there. Mama." 100 heads turned. Sera's eyes met Kade's across the pavilion, and she watched all color drain from his face. For a heartbeat, neither moved. For years collapsed into nothing. She saw recognition flash in those storm-gray eyes, watched them flicker to metallic gold at the edges. Shock. Then something darker. Something feral. "You." He breathed the single word, somehow cutting through 350 wolves' silence. Then his expression went cold as winter stone. "Seize her." The command cracked like thunder. Pack enforcers materialized from the crowd, moving toward her with inhuman speed. Sera lunged for Ivy, but a wall of bodies blocked her path. "Let me through. That's my daughter." Nobody moves. Kade's alpha command rippled through the pavilion, freezing every wolf in place. Every wolf except Sera. Her low ranking gave her partial immunity. But the enforcers were still faster, stronger. They had her surrounded in seconds. Kade descended from the platform in 3 fluid strides, Ivy's small hand still trustingly in his. Up close, he was exactly as she remembered. Tall, broad-shouldered, devastatingly handsome in that sharp, intense way that had stolen her breath 4 years ago. But his eyes held none of the warmth she remembered from that spring. They were ice. "Explain." The word was a command, not a request. Sera lifted her chin even as her pulse hammered. "Let go of my daughter." "Your daughter." Kade's gaze dropped to Ivy, who stood completely unafraid despite the tension saturating the air. Those golden eyes studied the alpha with open curiosity. "How old is she?" Sera's silence was answer enough. Kade's jaw clenched. His second, Marcus, she remembered him, appeared at his shoulder, urgency written across his angular face. He held out a tablet, showing Kade something on the screen. The alpha went rigid. "Impossible," he said, his voice barely controlled. "I scattered her ashes myself 4 years ago." Marcus leaned in, whispering too quietly for Sera to hear, but she saw Kade's knuckles go white as he gripped the tablet. When he looked back at her, there was something new in his eyes. Not just anger. Betrayal. "Take them both to Blackthorn Estate," he ordered, his voice flat. "No one speaks of this. Anyone who discusses what happened here today will answer to me personally." "Wait." Sera lunged forward, but enforcers caught her arms. "You can't just. I am the alpha of this territory." Kade's voice dropped to something lethal. "I can do whatever I want. And you, Sera Quinn, have considerable explaining to do." He knew her name. Of course he knew her name. "Mama." Ivy's voice was small now, finally sensing danger. Kade looked down at the girl. Really looked at her. And Sera saw the moment he noticed the golden eyes, the sharp cheekbones, the copper birthmark shaped like a crescent moon just above Ivy's left eyebrow. "Get them out of my sight," the alpha said roughly, "before I do something we'll all regret." As the enforcers pulled her away, Sera caught one last glimpse of Kade Blackthorn standing alone in the center of the pavilion, that tablet still clutched in his hand, staring at it like it held answers that might destroy him. And she knew with sinking certainty that the life she built in hiding was over. Chapter 2. Blackthorn Estate looked exactly as Sera remembered it. Imposing black stone walls covered in creeping ivy, tall windows that seemed to watch like eyes, and that overwhelming sense of power that pressed down on anyone who entered. She'd once felt safe here, once believed these walls would shelter her forever. Now it felt like a prison. The enforcers dragged her through the main entrance without ceremony, their grips bruising her arms. Ivy struggled in another enforcer's hold, her small face red with tears. "Let go of my mama," she wailed, her inner wolf flashing gold in her eyes. a dangerous sign for one so young. Ivy, baby, don't fight them, Sera called out, forcing steadiness into her voice even as panic shredded her chest. It's okay. Everything's okay. It wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. They hauled her up the main staircase, past portraits of Blackthorn alphas dating back 4 centuries, down the West Wing corridor she'd once walked freely, until they stopped at a door she knew too well. Kade's private study. The enforcer shoved her inside. Ivy was placed more gently beside her. Then the door slammed shut. She heard the lock click. Sera immediately pulled Ivy into her arms, checking her for injuries. Are you hurt? Did they hurt you? No. Ivy buried her face against her neck, her small body shaking. I'm sorry, Mama. I just wanted to give him the flower. I know, sweetheart. I know. Of course she did. Ivy had been drawn to her own father by instinct, by the bond that existed whether they acknowledged it or not. Sera held her daughter tighter and surveyed the study. Nothing had changed. Same massive oak desk, same leather chairs, same wall of books on territorial law and pack history. Same window overlooking the forest where she'd stood countless times watching the sunset with Kade's arms around her. For years ago, she'd thought she would die happy in this room. Instead, she died in every way that mattered. For years earlier. You're overthinking again. Sera had turned from the window to find Kade watching her from his desk, amusement playing at the corners of his mouth. Even then, before he'd taken the alpha title, he'd been devastating to look at. Tall and lean with those storm-gray eyes that could command armies or soften just for her. I was just thinking how surreal this is, she'd admitted, moving toward him. 6 months ago, I was a human florist who didn't believe in werewolves. Now you're mine. He'd pulled her into his lap, nuzzling her neck where his mark would eventually go. My mate. My perfect, unexpected mate. She'd laughed, the sound breathless. I'm not even ranked, Kade. I'm human-born. People are already talking. Let them talk. His voice had gone hard. You're fated to me. Chosen by the moon herself. Anyone who has a problem with that can challenge me directly. But they both knew it wasn't that simple. His uncle, Regent Aldrich Blackthorn, had made his position brutally clear. Human-born mates were too weak to produce strong heirs. The pack needed a powerful Luna. And there was already an arrangement with the Silverpaw pack. Lioness Silverpaw, daughter of Alpha Dominic, would be Kade's bride. Your uncle will never accept me, Sera had whispered. Then he'll have to adapt. Kade's arms had tightened around her. I don't care about his arrangements or his politics. You're mine, Sera. I'll burn this entire territory before I let anyone take you from me. She'd believed him. God, she'd believed every word. The study door burst open, slamming against the wall with enough force to make Ivy yelp. Kade stood in the doorway, and Sera's breath caught. His carefully maintained control had fractured. Raw emotion bled through, rage, disbelief, something that might have been anguish if she didn't know better. Out, he commanded the enforcers without looking at them. Everyone out. Seal this wing. No one enters without my direct authorization. The door closed behind him. They were alone. For a long moment, Kade just stared at her, really looked at her, as if trying to reconcile the ghost he'd mourned with the woman standing before him. For years, he finally said, his voice dangerously quiet. For years I believed you were dead. Sera straightened, even though every instinct screamed at her to submit to the alpha power rolling off him in waves. She kept Ivy tucked behind her. I know. A bitter laugh escaped him. You know. Do you have any idea what you put me through? What I did? Kade, I scattered your ashes. He moved further into the room, each step deliberate, predatory. At the cliff overlook where we first met, Lyanna brought them to me herself. Said they'd found your body in the river, drowning. She was so sympathetic. So very sorry. Sera's chest tightened. She hadn't known about the ashes. In her mind, Kade would have eventually married Lyanna, would have moved on, would have been safer without her. I went to identify what they recovered, Kade continued, his voice hollow. Dr. Chen showed me what was left. The DNA matched. The dental records matched. Everything matched. Because Dr. Chen had made sure it would. The sympathetic pack doctor who'd helped her disappear had been thorough. I hunted them. Kade stopped a few feet away, close enough that she could see the muscle ticking in his jaw. Every rogue wolf in a 100-mile radius. Then 200 miles. Then 3. I tracked them for 4 years, Sera. Left a trail of bodies across 5 territories because I couldn't rest until I'd avenged you. Horror crawled up Sera's spine. Kade, I didn't. Didn't what? Didn't mean for me to become a monster. His eyes flashed gold, his wolf rising. Too late. I've been a monster for 4 years. And you, his voice broke. You were alive, living under a false name in neutral territory with my daughter. The last 2 words came out strangled. I had to protect her, Sera said, her voice shaking. I had to protect both of us. From what? From me. The pain in those words nearly broke her. From your uncle. The words burst out of her. From the people who wanted me dead. Kade went very still. Explain. Now. Sera's hands trembled as she held Ivy closer. Her daughter had gone quiet, sensing the danger, her small fingers gripping her shirt. The night of your alpha ceremony, she began, each word like pulling glass from a wound. I was going to tell you about the baby. I came here early, wanted to surprise you before the ceremony began. For years earlier, the estate had been chaos that night, wolves rushing everywhere, preparing for the ceremony that would transfer alpha power from the dying former alpha to Kade. Sera had slipped through the confusion easily, making her way toward Kade's study. She'd been 3 months pregnant, barely showing, but the knowledge filled her with terrified joy. This baby would bind her to Kade forever. His uncle wouldn't be able to deny a fated mate who carried the alpha's heir. She'd reached for the study door handle when voices from inside stopped her cold. Absolutely not. That was Aldrich's voice, hard and cold. The human dies tonight. Sera's hand had frozen on the handle. Are you certain Kade won't notice? Lioness Silverpaw's voice, smooth as silk. My nephew is blind where she's concerned. It's a weakness that ends tonight. Papers rustled. Your wolves will make it look like an accident. Quick, clean, tragic. Kade will mourn, then he'll bind himself to you as planned. The Silverpaw alliance is too important to let some human whore destroy. And if she's pregnant? Lioness had asked casually. Then we eliminate that problem too. Sera had run. Didn't stop to think, didn't try to warn Kade. Just ran with terror pumping through her veins. She'd made it to Dr. Chen's clinic at the edge of territory, burst through the door sobbing. The doctor had taken one look at her face and locked the door behind her. They're going to kill me, she'd gasped out. The Regent and Lioness Silverpaw. They're going to kill me tonight. Dr. Chen had been quiet for a long moment. How far along are you? 3 months. And the father? It's Kade's baby. The doctor had closed her eyes. Then we need to move quickly. Dr. Chen provided a body, Sera told Kade, watching emotions war across his face. A rogue who died in custody. Same height, same build. She altered the records, made it look like me. Then she helped me disappear. Kade's hands had curled into fists. My uncle. I didn't know if you were part of it, Sera admitted. I didn't know who to trust. So I ran. And I've been running ever since. You should have told me. His voice broke on the words. God, Sera, you should have trusted me. You were about to become alpha. Your uncle controlled everything. The pack, the enforcers, the medical staff. If I told you, if you tried to protect me, he would have killed us both. I would have burned his world to ash. And it would have started a war. The Silverpaw pack would have retaliated. Other packs would have chosen sides. Hundreds would have died. She met his eyes. I couldn't let that happen. Not for me. Kade turned away, his shoulders rigid. When he spoke again, his voice was barely controlled. My uncle died 2 years ago. Heart attack, they said. Natural causes. Kade, and you've been alive this whole time. He spun back toward her, something wild in his eyes now. Dangerous. Living in neutral territory with my daughter, my heir, and you never thought to tell me. I thought you'd moved on. I thought you'd married Lioness. I told you I canceled the arrangement. His alpha power flared, making the air heavy. That night, when I thought you died, I refused to bind myself to her. Told my uncle I would rather watch the pack crumble than tie myself to anyone who wasn't my mate. We fought for hours. He said I was destroying our legacy. I told him if he ever mentioned Lioness Silverpaw again, I'd challenge him for alpha right then. Sera's breath caught. You chose me. Even after you thought I was dead. I chose you the moment I scented you. Kade's voice went rough. I would have chosen you every time. Ivy shifted behind Sera, peeking around her legs at the alpha who was so clearly her father. Those identical golden eyes studied Kade with careful curiosity. Kade's gaze dropped to the girl, and Sera watched his expression shatter. Her scent, he breathed. I couldn't recognize it before, with all the other wolves around. But now, he fell to his knees, bringing himself level with Ivy. His hand reached out, trembling, then stopped just short of touching. May I? Sera nodded, her throat too tight to speak. Kade's hand cupped Ivy's small face, his thumb brushing over the copper birthmark. "What's your name?" "Ivy." Her daughter's voice was small but steady. "Ivy Quinn." "Ivy." Kade repeated it like a prayer. "Do you know who I am?" "You're the Alpha." Ivy tilted her head. "Are you going to hurt my mama?" "No." The word came out fierce. "Never. I'm going to protect both of you. Promise." "I promise." Sera wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly it physically hurt. The study door opened without warning. A woman swept in, her heels clicking on hardwood. Platinum blonde hair perfectly styled, power suit immaculate. Lioness Silverpaw hadn't changed at all. "Kade, darling," she purred. "I heard there was some disturbance at the border ceremony." She stopped dead, her ice blue eyes landing on Sera. "Well, this is unexpected." Every muscle in Sera's body went rigid. "You," she breathed. Lioness' smile was razor-sharp. "Sera Quinn, back from the dead. How miraculous." Kade stood slowly, positioning himself between Lioness and his family. "How did you get past my enforcers?" "I'm your chief advisor, remember? I have clearance." Her gaze dropped to Ivy, and something flashed in her eyes. "Is that?" "My daughter," Kade said, his voice hard. "My heir." Lioness' expression smoothed into practiced sympathy. "Kade, we need to discuss this privately. The Pack Council will have questions. The legalities alone. The Council will accept what I tell them to accept." "Of course, but surely you can see the complications here. A woman who faked her death, reappearing with a child she's hidden from you for years. We need to handle this carefully." Sera's mind raced. Lioness was acting concerned, but there was something wrong about her presence here. The way she'd appeared so quickly. The way she kept glancing at Ivy. "It was you," Sera said suddenly. "Not Aldrich. You." Lioness' smile didn't waver. "I'm sorry. The murder plot. Aldrich wanted the alliance, but you wanted Kade." Pieces clicked into place. "Aldrich was traditional, but he wasn't cruel. You convinced him I was a threat. You orchestrated everything." "That's quite an accusation." "She's right." Dr. Chen's voice came from the doorway. The elderly doctor stood there, her expression grave. "Aldrich came to me afterward, Lioness. Months after Sera's supposed death. He was guilt-ridden, questioning what he'd done. He let it slip that you'd shown him falsified reports about human-born mates weakening Pack bloodlines. Reports you'd fabricated." Lioness' mask finally cracked. "You can't prove anything. I kept his confession. Recorded." Dr. Chen stepped into the room. "I've been waiting 4 years for Sera to come home, so I could give it to the right person." Kade's power exploded through the room, making the windows rattle. "Get out," he said, his voice lethal. "Kade, please. Get out." His alpha command rolled through the estate like an earthquake. "You have 1 hour to leave my territory. If you're still here after that, I'll handle you the way I handled those rogues." Lioness' face went white. She looked like she wanted to argue, but the promise of violence in Kade's eyes stopped her. She turned on her heel and stalked out. The silence that followed felt fragile as glass. Then Ivy made a small sound, a whimper of pain. Sera looked down to find her daughter's face flushed crimson, her small body beginning to tremble. "Ivy, baby. Mama, I don't feel good." Her voice was thin, scared. "I'm really hot." Sera pressed her hand to Ivy's forehead and yanked it back. She was burning up. "Kade." Dr. Chen was already moving, pulling out medical equipment. She checked Ivy's temperature, her pulse, lifted her eyelids. Her expression grew more concerned with each passing second. "What's wrong with her?" Kade demanded. Dr. Chen looked up, and Sera had never seen the doctor look frightened before. "She's manifesting alpha genes," she said quietly. 4 years too early. It shouldn't be possible, but with her bloodline, alpha on one side, fated mate on the other, her wolf is too strong for her body. "So fix it," Kade growled. "I can't." Dr. Chen's hands were gentle as she examined Ivy, who was now crying softly. "The only thing that can stabilize her is a bond ritual. Father to daughter. Without it, the power will consume her from the inside out." Sera's world tilted. No, that's not. She's 4 years old." "I know." Dr. Chen met Kade's eyes. "You need to initiate a partial bond. Mark her as your heir. Let your alpha power anchor her wolf. It's the only way. Then I'll do it. Now." "It's not that simple." She took a breath. "She needs to be strong enough to accept the bond. And right now, her body is in shock. I can stabilize her temporarily, but She paused. You have 3 days. Maybe less. If you don't bond with her before then, her own power will kill her. Ivy's scream pierced the air, high, thin, and terrified as her small body convulsed. Sera grabbed her, her own sobs choking her as she tried to hold her steady. Kade's hands covered hers, his alpha power wrapping around them both, trying to soothe. 3 days, he said, his voice steel. We have 3 days to save our daughter. Chapter 3. Ivy's screams echoed through Blackthorn Estate for 3 hours before Dr. Chin managed to stabilize her with a combination of sedatives that would have killed a normal wolf pup. Sera sat beside the medical bed in one of the guest rooms, holding her daughter's small hand while she whimpered in fitful sleep. Her skin was still too hot, her breathing too shallow. Every few minutes, her little body would convulse, and Sera would have to hold her down to keep her from hurting herself. Kade stood at the window, his back rigid, hands clenched behind him. He hadn't moved in over an hour. Dr. Chin checked Ivy's vitals again, her expression grim. Her temperature is holding at 103. That's too high for a pup her age, but it's better than the 107 we had earlier. How long do we really have? Kade's voice was flat, controlled. The tone of an alpha who'd learned to bury his emotions deep. 48 hours. Maybe less if she spikes again. Dr. Chin set down her instruments. I won't lie to you. I've never seen a case this severe. The alpha genes are literally burning through her system. If we don't anchor them soon. She didn't need to finish. They all knew what happened when a young wolf's power consumed them from within. Sera had seen it once, years ago. A beta son whose wolf manifested during a territorial dispute at age 6. The boy had burned from the inside out in less than 8 hours. Then we do the bonding ritual, Kade said. Tonight. It's not that simple. Dr. Chin pulled out a worn leather journal, flipping through pages of handwritten notes. The alpha bonding ritual for an heir requires specific conditions. The father must be at full strength. The child must be conscious and willing. She paused, meeting Sera's eyes. And the mate bond must be completed first. Sera's stomach dropped. What? The ritual channels power from the alpha through the mate bond to the child. It's a triad, father, mother, daughter. Without the completed mate bond, there's nothing to stabilize the transfer. Kade's power would overwhelm Ivy instead of anchoring her. So we need to complete the mate bond. Kade turned from the window, his storm gray eyes landing on Sera. Tonight, the mate bond. The ceremony they should have performed 4 years ago before everything went wrong. The bite, the blood exchange, the permanent marking that would tie them together for life. Sera looked at her daughter, her small face twisted in pain even in sleep, and felt her choice narrow to a single point. I'll do it, she said quietly. Whatever it takes to save her. How generous of you. Kade's words were sharp enough to draw blood. To finally accept what should have been yours 4 years ago. Kade, don't. He held up a hand. I'll perform the ceremony because our daughter needs it. Because without it, she dies. Not because I've forgiven you for making me believe you were dead. Not because I understand why you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. Each word was a blade. Sera absorbed them silently, knowing she deserved every one. But I have conditions, she said, forcing steel into her voice. Kade's eyebrows rose. You're making demands? For Ivy's protection? Yes. She stood, moving between him and their daughter. I want immunity from pack law. Full immunity. No matter what happened in the past, no charges, no punishment, no retribution. Done. And if something happens to me, if I die, if I disappear, anything, Ivy is protected. She keeps her status as your heir. She's raised in the pack with full rights and privileges. You don't let your politics or your anger at me affect her. Kade's jaw clenched. You think I would punish my own daughter for your choices? I think powerful people make terrible decisions when they're hurt. Sera held his gaze. I need your word, Kade. Your alpha oath. For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then he placed his hand over his heart, the formal gesture of an alpha's binding promise. I, Kade Blackthorn, alpha of Obsidian Moon Territory, swear on my blood and honor that Sera Quinn will have full immunity from pack law, past and present. I swear that Ivy Quinn, my daughter and heir, will be protected and raised with all rights due to her station, regardless of what happens to her mother. This oath binds me until death. The words hung in the air, weighted with power. An alpha's oath was unbreakable. To violate it would mean losing his position, his pack, everything. Thank you, Sera whispered. Don't thank me for doing what's right for my daughter. Kade turned to Dr. Chin. How long do we need to prepare? The ceremony itself is quick, but I'll need 2 hours to gather the materials and set up the ritual space. Dr. Chin glanced at Ivy. She should remain sedated until then. The fever will spike again when she wakes, and we need her to have as much strength as possible for the bonding. 2 hours. Kade headed for the door. I'll inform the pack council. They'll need to witness the mate ceremony. It's tradition. No council, Sera said sharply. Just us and Dr. Chin. The fewer people who know about this, the better. The pack will talk either way. They already know about Ivy. Let them talk. But I'm not performing a sacred ceremony in front of the same council that might have been complicit in trying to kill me 4 years ago. Kade's expression darkened. You think the council knew? I don't know who knew what. That's the problem. Sera crossed her arms. We do this privately, or we don't do it at all. For a moment, she thought he'd argue. Then he nodded curtly. Private ceremony. But my second, Marcus, will need to be there as witness. I trust him with my life. Fine. I'll have him prepare the ritual chamber. 2 hours. Kade paused at the door, looking back at their sleeping daughter. Something in his expression softened just for a moment. She has your stubbornness, you know. Even burning from the inside, she fought the sedatives for 20 minutes. Despite everything, Sera felt a ghost of a smile. She gets that from both of us. Yeah, Kade's voice went rough. I suppose she does. The ritual chamber was in the oldest part of the estate, a circular stone room that predated the modern building by at least 2 centuries. Ancient pack symbols covered the walls, carved deep into granite. In the center stood a raised platform with 2 cushions and a low table bearing the ritual implements. Sera had been here once before, for years ago, when Kade had first shown her where they would perform their mating ceremony. She'd been so excited then, so hopeful. Now the room felt like a beautiful trap. Dr. Chin was already there, arranging items on the table with practiced precision. A ceremonial blade, 2 silver chalices, a crystal decanter of wine blessed by previous alphas, white candles, and binding cords woven from moon-silver thread. Everything's ready, the doctor said. The wine is from the alpha's private reserve, blessed by 9 generations. The blade was forged in starlight. The cords will glow when the bond takes hold. Sera approached the platform slowly. She'd changed into a simple white dress, traditional for the mate being claimed, while Kade wore ceremonial black. He was already in the chamber, standing with Marcus near the door, discussing security in low tones. You're sure about the privacy? Marcus was saying. Lion has been suspiciously quiet since you banished her. I don't trust it. She has until dawn to leave the territory. After that, she's dead either way. Kade's eyes found Sera across the room. Let's begin. Marcus took his position by the door, standing guard. Dr. Chun lit the candles, their flames casting dancing shadows on the stone walls. The ceremony is binding and permanent, Dr. Chun intoned, slipping into her role as pack elder. Once begun, it cannot be stopped. Once completed, only death can break it. Do you both enter this bond willingly? Yes, Kade said, his voice carrying through the chamber. Sera's throat was dry. Yes. Then approached the platform. They climbed the steps from opposite sides, meeting in the center. Up close, Sera could see the exhaustion etched in Kade's face, the weight he'd been carrying since the moment Ivy appeared in the pavilion. This man had spent 4 years believing she was dead, had cancelled his arranged marriage, had hunted rogues across 5 territories in grief and rage. And now he was binding himself to her forever to save their daughter. Kneel facing each other, Dr. Chin instructed. They knelt on the cushions, close enough that their knees nearly touched. Kade's storm-gray eyes met hers, and Sera saw everything he was holding back. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal. But underneath it all, something else. Something that had never died. Dr. Chin began the ancient words. Before the moon and this pack, we gather to bind 2 souls as one. Alpha to mate, mate to alpha, in blood and spirit an eternal bond. She handed Kade the ceremonial blade. The alpha draws first blood, marking his claim. Kade took the blade, his hand steady. He reached for Sera's wrist, his fingers warm against her skin despite everything. The blade was sharp. She barely felt it as he drew a shallow cut across her inner wrist. Blood welled, dark and red in the candlelight. I claim you, Kade said, his voice low and rough. Sera Quinn, as my mate, my equal, my other half. From this moment until death takes us. He raised her wrist to his mouth and sealed his lips over the cut, drinking. The sensation shot through Sera like lightning. intimate and claiming and utterly possessive. Her wolf, dormant for so long, surged to the surface with a desperate keen. "Mate," it whispered. "Finally. Mate." Dr. Chun handed Sera the blade. The mate accepts the claim and marks in return. Sera's hand shook as she took the blade. She reached for Kade's wrist, saw the tendons and muscles beneath his skin. One cut, quick and clean. His blood was hot against her fingers. "I accept your claim," she whispered. "Kade Blackthorn as my mate, my alpha, my other half. From this moment until death takes us." She brought his wrist to her lips and drank. His blood was fire on her tongue, power and strength and something wild. She felt his wolf recognize hers, felt the bond beginning to snap into place like a bridge being built between their souls. "Now the wine," Dr. Chin said, pouring from the crystal decanter into the 2 silver chalices. "Share this, blessed by your ancestors, and let the bond be sealed." She handed one chalice to Kade, one to Sera. They raised them in unison, eyes locked. "To the bond," Kade said. "To the bond," Sera echoed. They drank. The wine was sweet and strong, tasting of moonlight and ancient forests. Sera drained her chalice, feeling the warmth spread through her chest. Across from her, Kade did the same. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the bond slammed into place with the force of a hurricane. Sera gasped as sensation flooded her. Kade's emotions, raw and overwhelming. His rage at her deception. His grief at the years they'd lost. His fierce, desperate love for their daughter. And underneath it all, buried deep but undeniable, his love for her. It had never died. Even through 4 years of believing her dead, even through the betrayal of discovering her alive, that love remained. And he could feel her too. She knew it from the way his eyes widened, from the sharp intake of breath. He felt her terror of the past 4 years. Her loneliness. Her constant fear for Ivy. Her guilt at what she'd put him through. Her own love, bruised and battered but still burning. "Sera," he breathed. He grabbed her, pulling her against him as the power built. Their marks, the matching copper birthmakers, began to glow bright and brilliant. The light grew stronger, brighter, until it was blinding. The windows exploded outward with a deafening crash, glass raining down around them as the mate bond fully sealed, their wolves merging into something greater than either alone. Sera felt Kade's alpha power flow into her, stabilizing her low-ranking wolf, making her stronger. And she felt her own calming influence flow into him, soothing the aggressive edges of his dominance. They were one. The light finally faded. Sera sagged against Kade's chest, breathing hard. His arms were iron bands around her, holding her like he'd never let go. "It's done," Dr. Chin said quietly. "The bond is complete." Marcus's voice came from the doorway, awed. "I've never seen a bond that strong." The whole estate felt it. "Ivy," Sera gasped, pulling back. "We need to check on Ivy." They scrambled to their feet, Kade keeping one hand on her as they rushed from the ritual chamber. The bond hummed between them, strong and sure, leading them both toward their daughter. They burst into the medical room to find Ivy sitting up in bed, Dr. Chen's assistant checking her vitals. The little girl's eyes were bright and clear, her fever flush gone. "Mama!" She reached for her. Sera grabbed her, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, thank God. Thank God." "The bond worked exactly as it should," the assistant reported. "Her temperature is down to 98. Vitals are normal. The alpha genes have stabilized." Kade's hand rested on Ivy's head, gentle. Through the bond, Sera felt his overwhelming relief, his fierce protectiveness. "We still need to perform the air bonding," he said. "Tonight, while she's stable." "Let me get her some food first," Sera said. "She hasn't eaten in hours. I'll have the kitchen prepare something." Marcus appeared in the doorway, but his expression was grim. "Alpha, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Lioness Silverpaw collapsed in the south wing 20 minutes ago. She's in critical condition." Kade frowned. "She should have been long gone by now. Why is she still in the estate?" "She claims she was gathering her belongings when she suddenly fell ill. The pack doctors are with her now, but," Marcus hesitated, "it looks like wolfsbane poisoning." Sera's blood ran cold. "Wolfsbane? Someone tried to poison her," Marcus said. "Or she ingested it accidentally. Either way, she's dying." Kade's jaw clenched. Through the bond, Sera felt his suspicion. "Where is she?" "Medical ward, 2 floors down." "Stay with Ivy," Kade ordered Sera, then headed for the door. But Sera was already handing Ivy to Dr. Chen's assistant. "Keep her safe," she said, then followed Kade. No way was she letting him face Lyanna alone. They found the former advisor in a private room. Her perfect platinum blonde hair matted with sweat, her designer clothes rumpled. 2-pack doctors worked frantically, but even Sera could see it was hopeless. Lyanna's lips were blue, her breathing shallow and rattling. Out, Kade commanded the doctors. Now. They fled without argument. Lyanna's ice-blue eyes found Kade, and she laughed, a horrible, wet sound. Came to watch me die, darling? Who poisoned you? Kade demanded. No one. Another terrible laugh. The wine. The ritual wine. I switched it this morning. Put wolfsbane in both chalices. Was supposed to kill the human during your precious ceremony. Sera's stomach dropped. The wine we drank. Dr. Chin must have switched it back, Lyanna gasped. Clever bitch. Must have been watching me. So the poison chalice stayed on the table, and like a fool, I was thirsty after being banished. Took a drink while gathering my things. She coughed, blood flecking her lips. Ironic, isn't it? You tried to kill Sera during our mate ceremony, Kade said, his voice deadly quiet. Tried to kill her 4 years ago, too. Lyanna's eyes were glazing, her voice fading. Should have succeeded then. Would have, if that doctor hadn't helped her disappear. Why? The word tore from Sera. Why do you hate me so much? Because he loved you, Lyanna whispered. Loved you more than power, more than alliances, more than anything. I was supposed to be his mate. The Silverpaw Pack and Blackthorn Pack united. But you, she coughed again. You were nothing. Human-born. And he loved you anyway. Kade's power flared. You killed innocent wolves. Tormented Sera for 4 years. Nearly murdered my daughter before she was even born. For jealousy. Not just jealousy. Lyanna's smile was delirious. Your uncle. He understood. He knew what the pack needed. Strength, power. Not human weakness. My uncle is dead. No. Lyanna's hand grabbed Kade's wrist with surprising strength. That's what I came to tell you. Your uncle is alive. The room went silent. What? Kade's voice was barely human. He faked his death 2 years ago. Couldn't stand watching you weaken the pack. Refusing to enforce the old hierarchies. Protecting low ranks. Letting females hunt. Lyanna's grip tightened. He's been building an army. Rogues, exiled wolves, anyone who believes in the old order. She coughed. He's coming, Kade. Coming to take back what's his. And he knows about the girl. Where is he? Close. So close. Lyanna's eyes rolled back. He's going to kill the abomination. Kill you. Restore the true Blackthorn line. She convulsed once, violently, then went still. Kade checked her pulse. She's dead. Through the bond, Sera felt his shock, his rage, his disbelief. Your uncle's alive, she breathed. Impossible. I attended the funeral myself. I scattered he stopped. I scattered ashes. Just like I scattered yours. The explosion cut him off. A massive boom shook the entire estate, throwing them both to the floor. Alarms began shrieking. Glass shattered somewhere close. Screams echoed through the halls. The East Wing. Marcus's voice came through the mind link, the pack's telepathic connection. We're under attack. Rogues breached the mind link cut off with a sickening snap. Kade hauled Sera to her feet. We need to get to Ivy. Now. They ran through smoke-filled corridors, wolves rushing past them toward the fighting. The sounds of battle grew louder. Snarls, screams, the crack of breaking bones. They burst into the medical room to find Dr. Chun standing protectively in front of Ivy's bed, a silver blade in her hands. The room was intact, but through the window, Sera could see flames rising from the east wing. Thank God, she gasped, rushing to Ivy. Mama. Her daughter clung to her. What's happening? We're under attack, little one. But you're safe. I promise. Kade was at the window, his expression carved from stone. There are at least 50 rogues. Maybe more. They're organized, well-armed. This isn't a random attack. It's your uncle, Sera said. It has to be. As if summoned by her words, a figure appeared in the courtyard below. Even from 3 floors up, even through smoke and chaos, Sera recognized him from old pack photographs. Aldrich Blackthorn stood tall and imposing despite his age, his silver hair gleaming in the firelight. He was flanked by massive rogues, their eyes gleaming with bloodlust. And he was looking up, directly at their window. His voice boomed across the courtyard, amplified by alpha power. Kade, nephew. I gave you a chance to lead this pack properly. You failed. Kade shoved the window open, leaning out. Uncle. You're supposed to be dead. I should have died rather than watch you destroy everything I built. Aldrich's expression was twisted with disgust, refusing to enforce hierarchy, protecting the weak. And now this. You've mated with that human whore and produced an abomination. Sera's arms tightened around Ivy, who whimpered against her shoulder. That's my daughter, Kade snarled. Your great niece. That is a mistake that ends tonight, along with its weak father. Aldrich raised his hand, and the rogues around him tensed, ready to charge. The Blackthorn line ends here. And from the ashes, I'll rebuild what this pack was always meant to be. He pointed directly at the window, directly at Ivy. Kill them all. The rogues charged. Chapter 4. The rogues hit Blackthorn Estate like a wave of teeth and fury. Sera heard the impact. The crash of bodies slamming into doors, the splintering of wood, the savage snarls that promised death. Through the mate bond, she felt Kade's battle rage ignite, his alpha power flooding the estate in a command that shook the walls. Protect the air. All warriors to defensive positions. No rogue survives. The response was immediate. Throughout the building, wolves shifted and charged toward the attack. But there were so many rogues. Too many. This wasn't a random assault. This was an army. We need to move, Kade said, already shifting into combat mode. This room is too exposed. Dr. Chun grabbed a medical bag. The safe room. It's reinforced, silver-lined. 2 floors down. Can we make it? Sera clutched Ivy tighter, feeling her daughter's heart racing against her chest. An explosion answered her question. The door to the medical room blew inward, shredded by claws and brute force. 3 massive rogues stood in the doorway, their eyes wild with bloodlust, foam flecking their muzzles. Kade moved faster than Sera's eyes could track. He shifted mid-leap, his gray wolf massive and terrifying. He hit the first rogue with enough force to snap bone, his jaws closing around the wolf's throat. The creature died with a gurgling scream. The second rogue lunged for Ivy. Something inside Sera broke open. Not broke, but bloomed, like a door slamming open in her chest, releasing pressure she hadn't known she was holding. Power flooded her veins, cold and bright and utterly foreign. No. The word came out as a command, backed by something that made the air shimmer. A barrier of pure silver light erupted between the rogue and her daughter, translucent and glowing. The wolf hit it with a yelp and bounced back, stunned. Sera stared at her hands, at the silver light still crackling around her fingers. What? Lunar magic, Dr. Chin breathed, her eyes wide with shock. Blessed moon, you're manifesting lunar magic. There was no time to process. The third rogue was circling, looking for an opening. Kade's wolf dispatched the second with brutal efficiency, but more rogues were pouring through the doorway. 5, 6, 7, too many. Go! Kade's voice came through the mind link, rough with strain. Take Ivy to the safe room. I'll hold them here. I'm not leaving you. You have to protect our daughter. Through the bond, Sera felt his desperation, his terror at the thought of losing either of them. Please. And she understood. Ivy was what mattered. Ivy had to survive. Come on. Dr. Chin grabbed Sera's arm, pulling her toward a side door. There's a servant's passage. It'll take us to the lower levels. Sera ran, Ivy bouncing in her arms, the sounds of battle echoing behind them. The servant's passage was narrow and dark, lit only by emergency lights. They descended 2 flights of stairs, Dr. Chen leading the way with practiced certainty. How did you know about the lunar magic? Sera gasped as they ran. Your healing speed. The way Ivy manifested early. Certain markers in your blood work. Dr. Chen shoved open a door. Lunar-touched wolves appear once per generation. They're chosen by the moon herself, given powers to protect the pack in its darkest hour. But I'm human-born. Human-born is just origin. Lunar touch transcends all origins. They burst into a wider corridor. The safe room was visible at the end, a massive steel door already open. They were 20 feet from safety when Aldrich appeared. He stepped out of a side passage, flanked by 4 of the largest rogues Sera had ever seen. Up close, Kade's uncle was even more intimidating than she'd imagined. Tall and imposing with silver hair and storm-gray eyes identical to his nephew's. But where Kade's eyes held honor and strength, Aldrich's held only cold calculation. The human whore and the abomination, he said, his voice cultured and cruel. How convenient. I won't even have to hunt you down. Dr. Chin moved in front of Sera and Ivy. You'll have to go through me, Aldrich. Gladly. He gestured, and one of the rogues lunged. The silver light exploded from Sera again, this time forming a dome around all three of them. The rogue slammed into it and howled in pain, his first smoking where he'd made contact. Aldrich's eyebrows rose. Interesting. Lyanna failed to mention you had gifts. Lyanna's dead, Sera said, her voice shaking but steady. She drank the poison wine meant for me. Pity. She was useful, if overly emotional about my nephew. Aldrich studied the barrier with clinical interest. Lunar magic. I haven't seen that in 30 years. The last lunar touched was my sister, a fierce woman who tried to stop me from enforcing proper pack hierarchy. She died badly. Is that a threat? It's a promise. His smile was predatory. You see, everything that's happened has been part of my design. Lyanna's obsession with Kade made her easy to manipulate. The plot to kill you 4 years ago, mine. Your survival, an unfortunate complication. My fake death, necessary to build an army without my soft-hearted nephew interfering. Through the mate bond, Sera felt Kade's rage spike. He'd heard through the pack link, was fighting his way toward them. Aldrich continued, clearly enjoying his monologue. I have a younger nephew, you see. Born to a rogue she-wolf 20 years ago. Strong, brutal, everything Kade should have been. The plan was simple. Let Kade weaken himself with his progressive nonsense, kill him in battle, install my true heir. The pack would accept it. Better a strong bastard than a weak legitimate son. Kade isn't weak, Sera snarled. He refused to enforce rank hierarchies. He let low ranks challenge higher ranks without punishment. He broke his arrangement rather than honor an alliance. Aldrich's voice dripped contempt. And now he's mated with you and produced that. He pointed at Ivy, who whimpered against Sera's shoulder. Human blood contaminating the pure alpha line. It's an insult to everything the Blackthorn pack stands for. The pack doesn't belong to you anymore, Dr. Chin said. We'll see. Aldrich nodded to his rogues. Kill them. Start with the pup. The rogues charged in unison. Sera's barrier held, but she could feel the strain. Each impact sent cracks spiderwebbing across the silver surface. She wasn't trained in this power, didn't know how to sustain it. The barrier was already flickering. Mama, I'm scared, Ivy whispered. I know, baby. I know. She felt Kade getting closer through the bond, fighting through waves of rogues, but he wouldn't make it in time. The barrier was failing. The rogues were relentless. And Aldrich watched with cold satisfaction. Then Ivy began to glow. It started as a faint shimmer around her small body, golden and warm. Sera felt her daughter's fear transform into something else. Not courage exactly, but a deep instinctive knowledge that she needed to protect her mother. Ivy, what are you? Her daughter's body convulsed. Sera nearly dropped her as her form began to shift, bones restructuring, for sprouting across her skin. Ivy was shifting. At 4 years old, when most wolves didn't shift until adolescence, her daughter was transforming. The shift was agonizing to watch. Ivy screamed, the sound morphing into a high-pitched howl as her human form gave way to wolf. But where Sera had expected a small, dark pup, what emerged was breathtaking. A golden wolf, small but perfect, with brilliant copper-flecked eyes and a coat that seemed to shimmer with inner light. On her neck, the copper birthmark glowed white-hot. Ivy, the wolf pup, lifted her head and howled. The sound was impossible, too loud, too powerful for such a small creature. It rolled through the estate like thunder, carrying a summons that no wolf could ignore. The air calls. The air needs us. Protect the air. Through the bond, Sera felt the entire pack respond. Every wolf in the territory, from the strongest warrior to the elderly, felt that call in their bones. They turned as one toward the estate, toward their alpha's daughter, ready to defend her with their lives. The barrier shattered as Sera's concentration broke. The rogues lunged forward. Kade's gray wolf crashed through a window in an explosion of glass and fury. He landed between Sera and the rogues, his presence massive and terrible. Behind him, pack wolves poured through every entrance. Warriors, hunters, even the shop owners who'd shifted mid-work. They fell on the rogues like an avalanche. Aldrich's expression finally showed emotion. Shock. Impossible, he breathed. She's 4 years old. She shouldn't be able to. She's the Alpha's heir, Dr. Chin said quietly. Blood of both Alpha and Lunar touched. Did you really think she'd be ordinary? The battle turned in seconds. The pack fought with coordinated precision, protecting their young Alpha and her mother with savage devotion. The rogues who didn't die immediately tried to flee, but they were cut down without mercy. Aldrich backed away, his 4 elite guards closing ranks around him. This changes nothing. Even if the whelp survives today, she'll never be accepted as heir. Human blood is. Blessed by the moon herself. A new voice rang out. Elder Miriam stepped through the carnage, her ancient wolf form still powerful despite her age. Behind her came the other pack elders, their expressions grave. We recognize the signs, Miriam continued, her eyes on Sera. The silver light, the protective magic, the impossible healing speed. Your lunar touch appeared when the pack needed it most. Your blood doesn't weaken the alpha line, it strengthens it beyond measure. One by one, the other wolves knelt, warriors, hunters, even some of the rogues who'd switched sides when they heard Ivy's call. All of them acknowledging what Sera had always been, what she'd never known she could be. Aldrich snarled. I don't care what superstitious nonsense. Then you'll die for your ignorance, Kade said, his voice coming from his wolf through the pack link. Father and nephew faced each other across a blood-stained floor. The pack drew back, giving them space. This was alpha law, a challenge to the death, witnessed by the pack. Aldrich shifted into his wolf form, massive and silver gray. He was older than Kade, but he'd spent 2 years fighting rogues, keeping himself battle-hardened. This wouldn't be easy. They circled each other, power crackling between them. Aldrich attacked first, using his experience and weight to try to overwhelm his nephew. But Kade was faster, stronger, driven by 4 years of grief and rage. They met in a clash of teeth and claws. 2 alpha wolves fighting for supremacy. The battle was brutal. Kade took a savage bite to his shoulder, but retaliated by shredding Aldrich's flank. They rolled across the floor, snapping and tearing. Blood splattered the walls. Through the bond, Sera felt every hit Kade took, every wound he inflicted. She wanted to help, but this was his fight, his right to defend his pack and family. Ivy pressed against her leg, whimpering. The golden pup was exhausted from her first shift, barely able to stand. Sera scooped her up, cradling her wolf form. Kade finally got the upper hand, his jaws closing around Aldrich's throat. The older wolf thrashed, desperate, but couldn't break free. Yield, Kade commanded through the pack link. Acknowledge defeat and leave this territory forever. That's your only chance to survive. For a moment, Sera thought Aldrich might accept, might choose exile over death. Instead, he did something unthinkable. Using the last of his strength, Aldrich shifted back to human form mid-fight. A dangerous, painful maneuver that left him momentarily vulnerable, but freed him from Kade's grip. He rolled away, and when he came up, he had a silver blade in his hand. Silver was toxic to wolves, deadly even to alphas. No honorable wolf would use it in combat. But Aldrich wasn't aiming for Kade. He was aiming for Ivy. If I can't have my legacy, you don't get yours, he screamed, lunging forward with inhuman speed. Everything happened in slow motion. Sera saw the blade arcing toward her daughter, felt Kade's horror through the bond as he tried to intercept, but knew he was too far away. Saw Ivy's golden eyes go wide with fear. She didn't think, didn't hesitate. Sera threw herself between the blade and her child. The silver knife punched through her chest with a burning agony unlike anything she'd ever felt. Silver was death to wolves. It prevented healing, poisoned the blood, killed slowly and painfully. She heard Kade's anguished howl, felt Ivy shift back to human form beneath her, screaming, "Mama! Mama!" Saw Aldrich's triumphant expression. Then the lunar magic erupted. This time it didn't come as gentle silver light. It came as a supernova, blinding and absolute. Power poured from the wound in Sera's chest, not blood but pure moonlight. The silver blade melted, vaporized by the magic flowing through her. Sera felt her body changing, transforming. The human-born weakness she'd carried her whole life burned away like mist in sunlight. Power flooded her veins. Not alpha dominance, but something older, something primal. When the light faded, she stood whole and unmarked. The wound was gone, and around her neck, a mark had appeared. Not the copper crescent moon she shared with Kade, but a full moon surrounded by stars. The mark of the lunar touched. Elder Miriam gasped. The moon has shown her favor. Sera Quinn is under divine protection. To harm her is to invoke the goddess's wrath. Aldrich stared in disbelief. No, this can't. Kade's wolf hit him like a freight train, bearing him to the ground. This time there was no mercy, no offer of exile. The former regent died with his nephew's teeth in his throat. The pack howled their approval. The old order truly dead, the new one born in blood and moonlight. The aftermath took hours. Bodies needed to be cleared. Wounded wolves tended to. Damage assessed. Sera stayed in the safe room with Ivy, who'd collapsed into exhausted sleep in her human form after her first shift. Dr. Chin monitored her carefully, but her vitals were strong. "She'll be weak for a few days," the doctor said. "First shifts are always draining, but she's healthy. Strong." "You did well, little one," Sera murmured, stroking Ivy's hair. Kade found them there near dawn. He was covered in blood, his uncle's, the rogue's, his own, but the wounds were already healing. When he saw Sera alive and whole, something in his expression cracked. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "You were dying," he said against her hair, his voice broken. "I felt it through the bond. You were dying and I couldn't reach you. The magic saved me." Sera held him just as tightly. "I'm here. We're all here." When I saw that blade, he pulled back enough to cup her face in his hands. "Don't ever do that again. Don't ever put yourself between danger and—" "I'd do it 1,000 times." She pressed her hand over his heart. "She's our daughter, Kade. I'd die for her without hesitation. So would I. But I can't lose you. Not again. Not ever." He kissed her then, deep and desperate, pouring 4 years of grief and joy and relief into that single kiss. When they finally pulled apart, Elder Miriam was standing in the doorway. "The pack waits," she said gently. "They need to see their alpha, their Luna, and their heir." Sera hesitated. "I'm not officially. You are lunar touched. You are the alpha's true mate. You are the mother of his heir." Miriam's expression was warm. "And more importantly, you threw yourself on a silver blade to save that child. Every wolf in this territory will follow you without question." Kade took Sera's hand. Together, she looked at their sleeping daughter, at this man she'd loved and lost and found again, at the future spreading before them. Together, they gathered in the main courtyard as the sun rose. The entire pack, nearly 350 wolves, stood in concentric circles around the raised platform. Despite the battle, despite the losses, their faces showed hope. Kade stood at the center, Sera beside him, Ivy cradled in her arms. The little girl had woken just enough to cling to her, her golden eyes drowsy. "This pack has bled tonight," Kade's voice carried across the crowd. "We've lost good wolves defending our home against those who would drag us back into darkness. But we've also proven something. We are stronger than hatred, stronger than fear, stronger than the old ways that would divide us by blood and origin." He turned to Sera, and the love in his eyes was visible to everyone. "For years ago, I lost my mate. Or I thought I did. Tonight, I claim her now before all of you as my Luna. Sera Quinn, lunar-touched and mother of my heir, will stand beside me as we lead this pack into a new era." The pack howled their approval. Then Kade lifted Ivy, holding their daughter high so everyone could see. "And this is Kade Blackthorn, my daughter and heir. She who shifted at 4 years old, and called you all to battle with a howl that shook the territory. She who carries both alpha blood and the moon's blessing. She is your future alpha." More howls, louder now, celebration mixing with grief, hope with sorrow. Sera felt tears streaming down her face as the pack chanted their names. Luna Sera, Heir Ivy, Alpha Kade. Finally, she felt safe. Finally, after 4 years of running and hiding in fear, she had a home, a pack, a family. As the celebration continued, Dr. Chin touched Sera's elbow. A word in private. Something in the doctor's tone made Sera's stomach drop. She handed Ivy to Kade and followed Dr. Chin to a quiet corner of the courtyard. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong exactly." Dr. Chin pulled out a tablet, showing what looked like blood work results. "During the mate ceremony, I took samples from both of you. Standard procedure. I ran a full panel on yours this morning." She paused. "You're pregnant." The world tilted. "What?" "About 6 weeks, I'd estimate. Which means it happened before the ceremony, before the bond was completed." Dr. Chen's expression was troubled. "And Sera, it's twins." Joy flooded through her, bright and overwhelming. "Twins. 2 more children." She pressed her hand to her stomach, tears welling again. "Kade will be thrilled." "There's something unusual about their scent signatures," Dr. Chin said. The joy froze. "What do you mean?" "When I analyzed your blood, I isolated the twins' markers, their genetic signatures. And Sera." Dr. Chin pulled up another screen, showing complex genetic charts. "They don't match any wolf lineage I've ever seen. They're not just alpha and lunar touched. There's something else. Something I can't identify. The markers are shifting, changing, like the babies are absorbing power from multiple sources. Is that dangerous? I don't know. I've never seen anything like it. Dr. Chin met her eyes, and Sera saw genuine fear there. The scent signatures suggest the twins might not be entirely wolf. Or they might be something more than wolf. Or, she shook her head. I need to do more tests, monitor you closely throughout the pregnancy. But Sera, whatever these babies are, they're unprecedented. And unprecedented usually means dangerous. Sera's hand tightened over her stomach, protective. They're my children. Nothing will harm them. I know, but we need to be careful. The pack just survived one war. If these twins manifest abilities no one understands, if they're seen as threats. Dr. Chin didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Sera looked across the courtyard to where Kade stood with Ivy, her family finally whole. The pack chanted around them, celebrating their new Luna and heir. And growing inside her, 2 more children. 2 mysteries. 2 potential threats to the peace they'd just won. Whatever came next, whatever these twins brought with them, Sera would protect them. She'd died and been reborn tonight, had become lunar-touched, had taken a silver blade for her daughter, had watched her mate kill his own uncle. She could face anything. But as she watched the celebration, feeling the new lives growing inside her, Sera couldn't shake the cold certainty that the real battle was just beginning. 6 months later, the nursery smelled like lavender and honey, soft moonlight streaming through windows that had been replaced 5 times since the battle. Sera had insisted on reinforced glass after the twins started manifesting. At just 3 months old, Sera stood at the window now, cradling her son Atlas against her shoulder while her daughter Nova slept peacefully in her bassinet. Outside, the pack grounds had been transformed. Where there had once been rigid hierarchy and fear, now children of all origins played together in the evening light. Human-born pups wrestled with pureblood pups. A young alpha girl helped a smaller low-ranked boy climb a tree. They're beautiful, aren't they? Sera turned to find Kade in the doorway, Ivy perched on his shoulders. Her nearly 5-year-old grinned down at her, those golden eyes bright with mischief. Papa says I can teach them to shift when they're older, Ivy announced proudly, because I'm the best shifter for my age in the whole territory. You're the only shifter your age in the whole territory, Sera laughed, reaching up to tickle her foot. But yes, you're definitely the best. Kade lifted Ivy down and moved to the bassinet, peering at his sleeping daughter with an expression of such tender wonder that it made Sera's chest ache. 6 months of fatherhood to twins had only deepened the love she saw in him every day. Has Dr. Chin figured out what they are yet? He asked softly, stroking Nova's downy black hair. She has theories. Sera adjusted Atlas, who made soft cooing sounds. The scent signatures are still shifting, but she thinks they might be harmonics. Harmonics. Wolves who can temporarily absorb and amplify the abilities of other wolves they're bonded to. It's incredibly rare. Only 3 documented cases in pack history. Sera smiled down at Atlas's tiny face. When I hold him, he radiates lunar magic. When you hold him, he shows alpha dominance. And when Ivy is near them, as if on cue, Ivy approached the bassinet. Immediately, Nova's skin began to shimmer with the faint golden glow that had marked Ivy's first shift. They mirror her, Kade breathed. They're reflecting her abilities. Dr. Chen thinks that as they grow, they'll learn to control it, choose which abilities to absorb and when. Sera's hand found Kade's. They're not threats. They're gifts. Bridge builders between different types of wolves. Like their mother, Kade pulled her close, careful of Atlas between them. The lunar touched who brought a pack together. I didn't do it alone. No, but you started it. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Speaking of which, Elder Miriam wants to discuss the Haven proposal tomorrow. Sera's heart lifted. The Haven was her project. A sanctuary for wolves fleeing abusive packs, a place where they could find protection, training, and purpose. She'd been fighting for funding for months, but some of the older council members still resisted. And I told her, Kade continued, his smile wicked, that the Luna's projects are not up for debate. The Haven is happening. Kade, I may have also mentioned that my mate can create force fields and survive silver blade wounds. So anyone who disagrees is welcome to take it up with you directly. You didn't. It's true, isn't it? He nuzzled her neck, right over their mating mark. Besides, the pack adores you. The Haven will be the most popular thing we've done. A gentle knock interrupted them. Dr. Chen entered, her weathered face creasing into a smile at the domestic scene. "Sorry to intrude. Just checking on our special little ones." She examined Atlas with practiced hands, then moved to Nova. "Growing beautifully. No concerning power spikes today. Atlas made his mobile float this morning. Ivy volunteered helpfully, and Nova made all the flowers in the garden turn silver. Perfectly normal for harmonic twins," Dr. Chin said serenely, as if babies with reality-bending abilities were an everyday occurrence. "They're learning to control the power they mirror. It's actually a good sign." She straightened, her expression growing more serious. "There's something else. I've been researching the old texts about lunar-touched wolves, and I found something interesting. The blessing doesn't just protect the current generation. It extends to all your bloodline. Your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. All of them will carry some measure of the moon's favor." Sera's breath caught. All of them. All of them. Which means Ivy's future children, the twins' future children. Dr. Chen's eyes grew misty. "This pack will be protected for generations. You didn't just save us from Aldrich, Sera. You secured our future." After the doctor left, Sera found herself overwhelmed. She carefully placed Atlas in his bassinet beside his sister, then stepped out onto the nursery balcony. Kade followed, wrapping his arms around her from behind. The pack grounds stretched below them, alive with evening activity. She saw Marcus, now Beta and Kade's most trusted advisor, playing with his new son. Saw young wolves training in the practice ring, all origins together. Saw low-ranking wolves walking with their heads high, no longer afraid. "Do you ever regret it?" Kade asked quietly. "The 4 years you lost. The life you could have had if you'd never run." Sera thought about the basement apartment, the double shifts at the flower shop, the constant fear of being found. Then she thought about Ivy learning to read with Kade before bed, about the twins' first smiles, about falling asleep every night in her mate's arms, safe and loved. "I regret that we lost time," she said honestly. "I regret that Ivy didn't know her father for 4 years. I regret the pain we both went through." She turned in his arms, meeting those storm-gray eyes. "But I don't regret surviving. I don't regret protecting our daughter. And I don't regret becoming who I needed to be to save this pack. My fierce Luna," he kissed her softly. "My lunar-touched mate. My alpha." She smiled against his lips. "My second chance." A commotion below drew their attention. Ivy had shifted into her golden wolf form and was racing around the courtyard, a dozen other pups chasing after her in delight. Her howl of joy echoed across the territory. Not a summons this time, just pure happiness. "She's good with the other children," Kade observed. "Natural leader, but not domineering. She makes sure everyone's included. She gets that from you. She gets her courage from you." Kade's hand settled over her stomach, even though the twins were already born. "Think we'll have more after these two?" Sera laughed. "Can we survive these two first?" Fair point. But his eyes held that warmth that told her he'd happily have a dozen more children with her. "Though I have to admit, I like our family. It feels complete." Complete. Yes, that was the word. They stood together as the sun set and the full moon rose, painting everything gold and silver. Inside the nursery, the twins slept peacefully, their power signatures finally calm. Below, Ivy played with her packmates, already becoming the leader she was born to be. And here on this balcony, Sera stood wrapped in the arms of the mate she'd thought she'd lost forever, surrounded by the family they'd built from ashes and blood and unconditional love. "I love you," she whispered, "for everything you are, everything we've become." "I love you," Kade replied, "for surviving, for coming back, for giving me a family worth fighting for." They kissed as the moonlight blessed them both. The moon's chosen and her alpha, watching over a pack that had learned to value love over power, unity over hierarchy, and hope over fear. Inside the nursery, Atlas began to glow softly, his mother's lunar magic responding to the full moon. A moment later, Nova's eyes flashed golden, mirroring her sister's gift. And from the courtyard below, Ivy's joyful howl rose to greet the moon, carrying with it a promise. This pack protects its own. This family stands together. And love, true, fierce, unconditional love, conquers all. Sera smiled, feeling the truth of it in her bones. They had fought for this peace, bled for it, died and been reborn for it. And it was worth every moment. "Come on," she said, tugging Kade back inside. "Let's check on them one more time before bed. You checked on them 5 minutes ago. I'm their mother. I'm allowed to be obsessive." Kade's laugh was warm and free. Fair enough. Though at this rate, they'll never learn independence. They're 3 months old and they can bend reality. They have time to learn independence. She bent over the bassinets, adjusting blankets that didn't need adjusting, smoothing hair that was already perfect. Right now they just need to know they're loved. They'll never doubt that. Kade stood beside her, one hand on Ivy's shoulder as their older daughter pressed against his leg, the other hand finding Sera's. Not with you as their mother. Ivy yawned hugely. Can I sleep with the babies tonight? You have your own bed, little wolf. But what if they need their big sister? Sera and Kade exchanged glances. Through the mate bond, she felt his amusement mixing with tender indulgence. Just tonight, Kade relented. But you have to promise to actually sleep, not play with them. I promise. Ivy scrambled onto the large cushioned chair near the bassinets, curling up like the wolf pup she still was at heart. Within minutes, her breathing had evened into sleep. Sera stood there, looking at her 3 children. Her miracle babies who should never have existed, who had survived against impossible odds, who represented everything good that had come from darkness. Blessed, she murmured. We're blessed. Yes, Kade agreed, pulling her close. We are. And as the moon shone down on Obsidian Moon, on a family born from tragedy and tempered by love, the moon herself smiled. Some stories end in darkness. But this one ended in light. Years later, Ivy would tell her younger siblings about the day she first shifted, about the mother who threw herself on a silver blade, about the father who killed his own uncle to protect his family. She would tell them about the pack that learned to value hearts over hierarchy, about the lunar-touched Luna who changed everything. And Atlas and Nova would grow up knowing they were loved, knowing they were special, knowing that their family's strength came not from power or dominance, but from the simple, profound choice to stand together against the darkness. The Blackthorn pack would thrive for generations, protected by the moon's blessing, guided by leaders who remembered that true strength lies in protecting the vulnerable, not dominating them. And on full moon nights, when the pack gathered to run together under silver light, you could still hear the echo of that first impossible howl, the 4-year-old heir calling her pack to arms, the sound of a family refusing to break, the promise that love, in the end, always wins. Always. The end.